Welcome. Thank you for joining me. I'm Karen Ann Lusick McDonald, and we are going to have some exciting sound advice for you today. Let's talk a little bit. We're going to talk about solfeggial tones. I'm going to talk about what's those solfege things that are really helpful for you. What's everyone talking about? This vibing and this frequency and the sound healing beds and stuff like that. What is the chakra healing tones? What are the tuning forks? And then also what I love is Dr. Paul Nogier. And what are the Nogier tones and overlays and harmonics that you can use? So we're going to talk a little bit about that over the next hour. So I want to welcome you for joining me. If this is your first time, you can go back and take a look at my live streams here at Karen Ann Lusick McDonald. I'm on Rumble, Odyssey, and on BitChute as well. Telegram, MeWe, Discord, and a few other places here, not only for Facebook. So I'll put these up and I'll post them on my Karen McDonald, my Data Truth group. So you're welcome to join that. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can do it at home. So I think this is really important because we can put headphones around, obviously, our head, right? We can use those. We can always use low reduction and stuff like that. So again, get some headphones. The better they are, the better they work. It's called hemisync or holosync technology. But we're going to talk about what's the importance of the 40 hertz. I just put a really great video up. It talks about with Greg Braden, how he's talking about using 200 hertz and how to sync the brain in. So it's great to see you guys. Thanks for joining me. Everyone is making it in here slowly. We're kind of trickling in. There's our group here. Deanie, how are you doing? You guys, you're enjoying the shows. I've had a lot of people call me lately that they're just really enjoying the information, and especially those people that have been even in the biofeedback or in the whole linguistic fields or in the healing arts, because they're learning new and exciting information. I've accumulated over like 42 years of doing this. So they certainly didn't tell us this in nursing, did they? But, this is where we've come to. So one of my first things to do with, learning about sound besides making music, I think it's really important. I always wanted a piano and my mother wouldn't get me one, right? My brother could have hockey and everything else, but I didn't get that piano. But, aside from, singing in the choirs or going into different things along that line and learning a little bit ukuleles and recorders like we all go through in schools. But what was really important is that I sat there. You can make your own music. And this is really where it gets into using things like tuning forks we'll talk a little bit about today, but also things like getting just a drum. And if you don't want those animal skins, did you know they got repurposed, and even hemp skins and recycled skins you can get on Amazon? They sound just as great. I've been using those for years with my clients, and they experience just wonderful healing. So it's not just being shamanic. It's about actually producing a sound that correlates here. And of course, we're all vibed into the 7.83. That's the mother beat, apparently, the earth, the Schumann wave, which is all over the place these days. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I really wanted to get in. One of my first ones when I really started getting into biofeedback was the sound therapy, because I started learning about what was going on at different, the Monroe Institute and Heart Math Institute, and how the brain heart coherence was like much stronger, and that your heart was really where we're supposed to be going, and get rid of this kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is starting to make sense. Starting to learn about biofields, starting to learn about what that medicine is, how we affect each other, and how we can also enhance each other's biofield, and how it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Obviously as a nurse, the first, experiences with ultrasound was seeing things that say that we went from slashing and dashing and dicing and burning and cutting and drugging people in for surgeries. And they started when I was in the late 80s. When I started doing nursing, they started switching into ultrasound and getting rid of kidney stones. And I went, wow, isn't that amazing? But did the light bulb at that time go off going, why aren't they doing this for tumors? If we could match the pitch or the resonancy, the coherency of what was in that kidney stone, why couldn't we do it for gallstones? Why couldn't we do it for everything? And of course, the answer came to be, 10 years later, well, of course we can, right? What was rife? What was radionics? What was radiesthesia? What was hyptrisy? What are all these different works? Semantics, all the buzzwords here, right? But again, most powerful thing I find in the universe is your voice. It's all inside, and when you can create that frequency, whether you're doing pranayama, getting into breath work, using essential oils in breath work, using the tuning forks and tuning yourself in. I think this is where we're going in here. So there's a question here. What did you have here? I wanted to ask your thought on plant-based fragrance oils. I'm unsure of this because I'm only used to therapeutic essential oils only. Great question. Fragrance, no. Therapeutic, yes. Okay, so quite often, and it depends on the areas, but FDA and Health Canada are almost as bad. So what they basically would do is you could put as little as 10% in of the substance. And I always use the analogy of, I still use it, of a screwdriver. They could put 10% organic orange juice in and put the rest vodka and sell it to you as being, pure and natural. I mean, they do put actually blood in. So whether you know that, they can use blood derivatives. And this is how they get around thinking that blood in adrenochrome basis is natural. So a lot of this stuff here, you could use urine in cosmetics and call it natural derivatives. So this is where you really need to know the supplier. So again, you have to call the suppliers because a lot of times they find they don't want to get caught. They don't want to have a legal thing and they don't want to deal with these, Nazi draconian agencies either. So they'll just put 100% pure, 100% natural when in fact, if you keep reading or call them, it is therapeutic. So again, there is a difference. 4 grades, therapeutic, which is your heirloom. 2nd grade is organic. And then 3rd is basically like, if you would see genetically modified or fragrance or conventionally done. So that's what you need to look at. So again, you have to call the supplier, but most of the times, like on Amazon, where they call it fragrance is usually a semi-synthetic. So that's why the hospitals always, I tried to dance around that for, let me tell you, about 15 years, because I would get asked to come in by the families and go into the hospitals, which I did. I made hospital calls and, switch from doing house calls to doing hospital calls the other way, or, doing consults with the doctor, and we're all FaceTiming in the same hospital room. And that's happened several times. I've done it between here and, let's say, Saskatoon or different, specialists as well. So one of the things too is that they always want fragrance free. And so I just remind them of their coffee and their cleaners and everything else, that there are smells there. But what I find is if you need to use it in a hospital, use your capsules. Or what I do is just do something very benign. Orange is amazing. Lemon is amazing. And a little bit of peppermint. Don't go over wild. You start putting in things like lavender and weird stuff and frankincense, they actually go just nuts in the hospital. And I kind of get it, right? So those are some of the things that you need to be aware of. So yeah, I mean, absolutely in there. And your fragrance, because they're usually semi-synthetic, they're basically a pharmaceutical at that point. So, we need to take a look at. So if you have a question about what the supplier is, who's creating that, who's this, who are you sourcing it from, let me know. But as a rule, I usually suggest, I know those people. I mean, I've talked to Eden's Gardens. I've talked to, Nivessence. I have talked to all the different suppliers that I usually deal with. I knew Gary Young, I trained with him. I took fire walking with him. So, Justin at doTERRA. There's not too many people I don't know in the industry directly that I could phone him up and say, hey, I've got a question. Key Aroma is a great place, Key Aroma shop. And that's a great place in Canada. And I just gave someone new directions. But I know, like on Amazon, I quite often will say, hey, why don't you go get this kit? And, in here, one is called Pure D''or. And that's a really nice thing. Plant Guru, plant therapy. So take a look and always give a call to the supplier. Or if you're on Amazon, it says there's a thing where it's dropped down. It says you can contact the supplier directly. And I've done that several times. So that's how you always keep the integrity of what's going on. So, I want to talk a little bit about the power of visualization, the power of vocalization, and what does that equal? Our ability to co-create, or what you guys like to call manifestation. So there's the 2-part equation there. We can visualize what we want. I can visualize the tuning forks. I've got some really amazing friends. I've got a couple friends that have synesthesia, and I don't know if you know what that is, but there are friends like Dr. Richard Allen Miller. When he listens to music, you and I hear it. He doesn't. He sees it. He sees the colors, the vibration, and basically what's called the sacred geometry, or the fractals of it, kind of like a psychedelic kaleidoscope. But not everyone has the same way of interpreting frequencies as everyone else does. And when you start to learn about people that have got, extrasensory perceptions, extrasensory gifts. People have been augmented with technology, whether it's always to their, advantage or not. These people exist out there. So don't assume what you see and what you hear is what everyone else does. It's got nothing to do with 2020. We can all pass a ridiculous 2020 exam with or without contacts or glasses. Doesn't mean you can see into other dimensions. And sometimes some of us do. So that depends where you're at here. So the whole universe is alive. It's alive with these sounds and the vibrations, People were like actually getting this wow signal. If you heard, how many of you guys have heard about Atlas coming in? I think since July the 4th, everyone should have heard by Atlas. It's a comet, not a comet. 55 stories. Everyone's got a theory. They're good people, bad people. There's no people. There's AI. It's a comet, not a comet. It's bending the other way. It's defying gravity. It's got nickel. It's like, coming in at, 200,000 miles per hour, the size of Manhattan. I mean, that's not little. But of course, there's comet icing in 2013, and that just turned around a week later and didn't show up. So whether they show up or don't show up, there are frequencies coming out of that. So whether we buy that or not is another story, because where does it come from? NASA's going to tell us that stuff. They call it the wow signal, and there's actually pulsed signals like the movie Contact. Do, 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 do. Okay, so there's things coming up there. So this is where the sound comes in, and we need to explore our environment. How many people have gone out there and actually listened to the forest? Give me a thumbs up or something, or say yes or something in the chat room. Have you actually heard the music of the forest? Have you heard the trees? Have you heard those bees? Have you heard the birds? But I'm going for something specifically to the trees. There's something called the ringing cedars of Russia. There's a whole slew of books in here, which, we've got. And those ringing cedars of Russia books talk about listening to the plants, listening to the trees. And I've had that happen. And I remember a friend of mine, Anya, called me up one day and she said, what if these trees are up by Prince George? I said, I don't care if they're where Prince George. If that's where you hear these trees talking or singing or feeling or interpreting this vibration that is so healing to you, so melodic, then that's where you need to maybe focus for a bit, or take a little vacation again. I don't know. So these are some of the things that we need to bear in mind, because this is amazing how this is. So let's think about it basically like a guitar. You've got a string. Once you pluck that string, it vibrates. That's your frequency. And that frequency is creating a sound, and it's measured usually, if we said it's 100 hertz, well, then it vibrates 1,000 times per second. So if you're getting that would be 1,000 times would be what? 1,000 hertz, right? So it's measured at 100 hertz frequencies. And so I like getting in there. So most of us have very limited hearing. Okay. So if you've listened to a lot of these things, and how many of you have gone and said, I need to listen to the hearing test. Like my ears are buzzing off the planet for the last 24 hours. Could be like all the ostrich stuff or whatever's going on, or we've had storms for 3 days. But right now it is so loud. It's ridiculously loud. And so I am actually hearing that. Okay. I hear it and I feel it. I'm not having tinnitus. I'm hearing the extra strings being plucked through these towers, all around us, above and below. And so what happens is that most people can, 16 to 25 hertz. I would actually say that's not true. Really, for the most part, when you get into it, I've listened, and I would say it usually goes out for me about 8,000 to 9,000, maybe 10 on a good day. But you can go test yours. And so, yes, go take a look. And then more importantly, go take a listen to basically a hearing test. And we've done that a few times on there. And so we want to get into what's going on with the tuning. And I like to say is that we are tuning you in, or it's your day of atonement. Reiki masters, I like to go, I'm going to draw this little symbol in here. And I've got this secret stuff because I've been initiated in, and, it's the way it went, and $5,000, $10,000 later, they've got us all sucked in. But anyway, in there. And then later when I studied, I went, those aren't right. you polluted those signals, right? You polluted that. But when we actually think that we are a leader over, we're going to fix someone's field, or I'm just going to hold space. I think that's the worst thing, especially these days. Anyone tells me that, they don't go near me. When I'm on a yoga mat, I have hands off. All my corners are flagged. Don't come near me. Okay. Because I want my space. in here. And I don't care how many people think they've been Reiki mastered or their big touch, a quantum touch, or healing touch, or touch for health, or matrix energetics. Don't invade people's space. That's their biofield. If they want something, they can come ask you. But, that's the whole thing. People are infringing on other people's things. So these are some of the things in here. We're going to talk a little bit about those harmonics and stuff like that. So one of the best books I really still like to this day, it's called Healing Sounds, The Power of the Harmonics, with, of course, who's the granddaddy of a lot of this is Jonathan Goldman. You go back 20, 30 years ago, he was working with Len Horowitz. Okay, all that stuff came in here. And I think this is where the future of medicine is. I don't think I know it because I've been cutting in and pioneering it for like 25 years already. So we're going to go a little bit through, I think, the solfege tones here. Okay, and I brought out my old little tuning forks here, and I like colored ones because they just look like really, really cute. Okay, so I keep, the silver ones here, but I like to have these because these are really cute. And I got a marker the other day, and I went, okay, I'm going to go 969 and 174 all the way down. And then what I also do is I've got a nice little collection here of all my weighted forks. Okay, so I like having these at my disposal because a lot of times when I do sessions for people, I'm combining many different therapies. I'm doing consults, I'm doing readings, I'm doing this kind of tuning around you, and I'm also doing the biofeedback. So you never get one thing with me. Whatever comes to my mind, and I'm like, wow, we can either muscle test or we can do different things as well for you on the biofeedback, which is more accurate than people's muscle testing these days. But here's a really cute kit, okay? And do take a look. I'm just going to reference this for a bit, but we're going to go through each one of those sounds here separately. And we're going to take a listen to them. So you guys are ready for this? I hope you are. Nice to see you. How's Darla doing? Okay, so we're going to go through 174. Okay, and when you start getting into some of these tuning forks, the lower ones, these tuning forks are going to be higher. So the prongs are the tunes. Oh, aren't they cute? They're almost like chopsticks. They actually vibrate higher. So it goes up through those. And ideally, this is the one thing I find they don't tell you what to do, is you should have two of them. It's not just about listening to this tuning fork. It is about, what's the point of this? Having two tuning forks, because the idea is to get you resonating, right? So let's listen to the 174 for a second. So we're already here. Now, the 174 reduces pain. So anything usually below, I find 1 to 200, or even whatever, 50 to probably 200, is really great on the physical body. But this is a straight 174 here. And that's in the F. Okay, 174. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So let's take a listen to it and see if you could notice what you notice on your body. Here we go. Okay, so ideally what I would be doing is go like up close to my ear. Okay, also get your voice in. It's not just about listening to these and playing. So we get the frequency. So again, think of it as an ultrasound. So we're going to go into 285 next. So that 174, some people call it the dot connector, right? So I always think of lower things, physical. I'm like a little detective. I'm connecting the dots. I'm connecting my reflexology points, or two pointing in matrix energetics. So the next one is the 285. Let's take a listen to that. This is F. Expressing your uniqueness. Now that's for energy fields and more tissue and stuff like that. I mean, as in tissue, not more tissue and Gomez from the Addams Family. Okay, so there we have that. Let's move up. 396. So the 396, when we go into here, we're looking at, it's like utre mi fa sol la ti do. Now in here, when we're looking at the 396, some people call it, I mean, I never liked the word liberating, but you're letting go of guilt and fear. And I think that's really important. A lot of people hold on to things. So what you're seeing is you're seeing in the lower frequencies or lower chakras. I almost like to think of each 100 as going into like a dimension or a chakra. So we'll do the 396. Here we go. Ready? You guys are hearing okay? Deanie sweating it out there? Laughing or crying, or I don't know. Davey's having some experiences. Okay, so okay, we're going to go up into the 417. People think a lot of it is to clear trauma. Who hasn't had trauma? Here we go. Ready? 417. Clearing the trauma. Rain. So again, you have the option of using a mallet, or some people like to use a really nice little hockey puck. Those are different options as well, whatever floats your boat. Again, we're moving up the scale. So the next one would be 528. So what does everyone think of 528? Oh, yes, 528. Yes. We are transforming and creating the miracles. Not magic, miracles. So if you ever notice what that is, it's DNA, cellular repair. So let's take a look at that. And then we're going to go to 369. Did I say 369? I'm looking at backwards. 639. That doesn't sound right. I always think of this like the connection, like the spirit. You're going into like the sixth chakra, third eye, right? We're getting that vision back. We're connecting to the spiritual, to the relationships, things like that, to people around us. You know, creating it. It's a peace to me. Okay, let's go. Next one on the seventh chakra is like 741. You can tell when I haven't had enough sleep today. Okay, so there's your 471. So now what do we want to do that? We're awakening our inner innate abilities. We're awakening the spirit. We're also clearing toxins. Okay, a lot of those toxins hang out here, right? When you get things coming in and stuck in that biofield. So 5-8, we went for 528, so flip it around a bit, is 852. And 852 is love, love. Some people call that returning to spiritual order. Okay. And last but not least on our plate strings here is 969. So kind of like the ninth chakra, what would we be thinking of? It's a state of completion, co-creation, perfection, right? I always like co-creation. I like the word state of enlightenment or God stuff. Never sits for me because you're co-creating. There's two of us or more, right? You're getting to that point. You're connecting on all levels. So those are some of the things. Now, having said that, let's just go back here into the different frequencies in here. Now, each one of these weighted forks here, okay, I got lots of them. Gotta love them. So when you get in the weighted part here, 221.2, 194.18 hertz, right? So let's take a look here. Probably barely going to be able to hear it, but if I put it up here, oh my gosh, the vibration that is happening here is like absolutely incredible. So if you put it to a glass, listen. So a lot of people will actually do their tuning forks and then put it in here, and you start watching the water spin, right? So that's another thing someone might want to do, is create that frequency and let it sit in there. Okay, don't do that, and because it goes down. So it's to put the point down. Okay, that's what you're doing. So I thought that was really kind of cool. Like we're getting some like really cool things. So the point of having these weighted ones is, again, I like to call it songs of the spine, and we'll go into that as well. I'm going to show you some pictures today. And the next thing I want to do let's take a look. I'm going to go through one of my frequency biofeedback areas here, but I'm going to go into my Facebook. We're going to take a look here because that's where I've got a whole thing on sound, solfeggio tones, and those type of things that might be really helpful for you. Because that, a lot of people, I still find like 80% of my clients are on there. So why would I not take advantage of it and put things on there? So we're going to take a look here, and we're going to look at that entire screen here, and we're going to go into my Facebook at Kieran Ann McDonald. Let's go in the photo albums. And we're going to go into something here. See where it says, you can see the song, the spine in there too. But we're going to look for the one that says tuning fork. So we'll go back a little bit just into here for a sec. This is more on the sound thing. So if you want to learn to stimulate the vagal nerve, right? Reducing the stress, that's where a lot of the forks and the sounds and everything else are in here, and vibrational patterns, right? Learning about the semantics, learning of what you're doing. And again, remember, vibration makes patterns. Patterns become sacred geometry. Sacred geometry are your fractals, right? I've had a bunch of people too, and bless our synergy group, but I'm also finding our synergy group is getting so cynical that they can't see, and they're so scared of using any technology to use or create and generate things that are not within these main frames that you have out here. Because you have very limited tuning forks, and you also have very, very limited frequencies, okay, when you're trying to go into this. So the color and the frequency here is basically what we're going into. And if we take a look at this type of thing, back as I bring this up here, and hopefully you guys can see this, is take a look what we just were going through. So there's a lot more things, like, there's the C in red, there's the D, there's the orange, there's the yellow. Again, this ties into your minerals, by the way, ties into the entire periodic table. Okay, so if we want to enhance those skills, this is where some of this is at here. Okay, it's really interesting that you can go on pyramids and sacred caves all over the place and all around the world, Mexico to Egypt to Russia to wherever, right across here. I've got these cute little stick men all over the place on my hieroglyphic petroglyphs here. And we are kind of built in frequencies or in layers. And all of this is in there, but that's actually the sound. And that's what a lot of you'll see in the hieroglyphics in Chinese and Japanese and calligraphy, what's going on here. So those are some of the things here. So as we look at these tuning forks, now I'm going into the weighted part here. I want you to see it's a little bit different. They use a weighted part here. So the root chakra, the infrared spectrum, right? Your perineum, the lower part of the colon, anything in the legs, that kind of thing. Circulation, the root chakra at 194.18 hertz. So as we move up, there's also a weighted version of that as well that you can go along the back or to the feet or ears for reflexology points. I think this is just amazing stuff here. So again, I like to combine the essential oils, right, with those tuning forks. Okay, and again, whatever therapeutic grade floats your boat. So again, we can use crystals, we can use, gemstones, you can use brass and Tibetan bowls, you can go right up to different crystals when you're using gongs and bowls and paste bowls and stuff like that. But again, you can also I used to put water and my essential oils in the bowls on a vibration plate with the biofeedback, right? You are getting massive amounts of frequencies through there. So this is how we're looking at the spectrum. And again, if you've got a headache, what could we be doing? Okay, where's the frequency? And a lot of people, they will do the tuning forks on the people, and it would be on there for a long time. So like I said, the advantage of using some sort of an app, like I said, I've got about 6 or 8 that I like to use for all my clients. And usually I'll use 3 or 4 on a client within an hour or two, by the way. I never just stick to one because they all offer different things. So one of the things that you can see the vibration, you can see the tuning, you can see where your voice is starting to resonate, where the patterns are, and generate something that's specific. Remember, there is a specific frequency for that peppermint. Peppermint herb at 25 is not the same thing as at an essential oil at 76, which is not the same thing that's at spruce at 500-600. So again, if you want to learn a little bit more about this, I've done with Solana, with Sherry Fox. Sherry Fox, there's our biofuel class she has on Wednesdays and Sunday evenings. So those are free if you want to. You've got to sign up and get a hold of Solana. and take a look at that. But that's part of what we do. We start learning about where we can play with this, and you're going to start seeing everything as sacred geometry. You see those different things like the golden mean and the Fibonacci and different things in here. So this is actually showing you also the degrees, the energy, okay, and how the patterns keep repeating and repeating. So those are some beautiful things there, which will tie into what tuning fork, what sound, or what combinations of sounds do I want to use if I want to do one acupuncture point or all of them. So I think that's really kind of cool, right? So we have to look at the wavelengths, right? So a lot of people, oh, this chakra stuff is nonsense. Well, then I'm going to talk to you in terms of wavelengths and ultrasound and UV. We're using ultraviolet light, just like you would use a Billy light and different spectrums of colors and lights and frequencies coming down on children in the neonatal. Okay, so all these different things have got a different sound, color, frequency, and those wavelengths are really important. So, again, achieving that diamond body, or what they call rainbow body, right? Getting all the colors, getting everything all in tune, and getting yourself vibing into the highest frequency that you possibly can. So I think this is something that's really, really important there. Now, what I want to talk a little bit about here is I want to talk about the states of basically what's happening in the brain here. Remember when we're supposed to be going into the slowest wave? It's kind of weird when you think about delta forces, but anyway, right? They come into attack, but where is it? Well, you're in your deep, rapid eye movement sleep right here. And that's getting into the nice low waves. That's the 1 to 4 hertz, right? And that's what I said. When I generate stuff off of a Insight Health app or a Genius or a BioVibe or a Rife code, again, they're done in hertz. So we can achieve. And actually, I don't know if you know this, but do you know how many people have had Alzheimer's and dementia and we've done these things and they've come back? So I'm sorry, but we can't just do that with tuning forks and oils and baking soda. It doesn't always work that way. And even using the lights, this is not LED pulse, like, we're putting you under some intensive thing. When you actually are doing things like the neurovisor is the same thing again. They have noticed that people have actually regrained and reset their brain and the neural pathways there. Even Dr. Jack Cruz, one of your top neurosurgeons in the water, he's always at the water. He doesn't want to come. He's on that, 33rd parallel, not coming off of it, but he's out there teaching with his, amber glasses and the blue blocker glasses. And he says, what's he talking about? He says light. Okay. And they were using light therapy. He's the big red light guy, but same thing, different frequencies. And again, they were getting people back that had, traumatic brain injuries, Alzheimer's, dementia, short-term memory loss, anxiety, post-traumatic stress. This is what we want to do here. So when we start moving into how many of you guys took theta healing, I did. It's really cool once you get into the higher levels, right? But anyway, the theta brainwaves basically are when you're most often in sleep. You're not the deepest, but it's also kind of a gateway. It's kind of that in-between state. And that's where people can do some really great meditation and stuff like that. And you're just like detaching from the world. You're just like in this. And again, a lot of things you can do with essential oils. Like I said, essential oils can help get you in here. Breathing, pranayama and breathing, doing stuff like that. Now, the next stage in here is that alpha state, right? Have you ever stopped to take a break and just went, right? You're just kind of that calmness. You're still coordinated, you're still there, but again, you're in that state of reflection, 9 to 12 hertz. And of course, beta, that's when we're like intense. We got to learn, we got a memorization, right? You're in a state of almost hypervigilance in a way, right? And again, that happens when we're doing a task or when people are thinking or overthinking. Okay, so that's when, ideally, but that's 13 to 39 hertz, right? And then when you get into the deep consciousness in here, right, the gamma waves, 40 to 100 hertz. Well, sorry, guys, but we don't always have things for that. That's why we need to use tuning forks. And we move into this state here of the levels of consciousness. So whether you like power versus force or the, I and everything else that you're looking at with David Hawkins, not that I always agree with it, but we'll just use it as a chart here, is what they're saying is that most people on the planet are below 200 in here. Now, what does that mean? It means most people have got a sense of, they feel pride, they've got anger, they've got desire, fear, grief, or apathy, not doing anything, just watching everything crumble, right? Detachment, right? Guilt, shame, death. Okay. The lower you go down, basically the wavelength lengthens and lengthens to the point you feel like you're on a flat line. So this is a huge thing in here. You've always got the converse or the opposite of it. You know, the worst thing, and as you can see, what's 250? Neutrality, sitting on the fence. So when we start getting into a state of being hopeful and optimistic, and we're starting to feel a little bit of happiness, and we're getting that productivity out of us, we're getting into the flow. That's what they call the fourth dimension. So again, almost 400. Go back to your chakras. That's what I go. And I want you to think of now what's happening to people when they're litmus paper, the pH, or the power of hydrogen, the power and the potential of that hydrogen. What happens when your litmus paper starts turning into that green, you guys, right? You notice a little self-love, not going to be like, self-abusing. The addictions go down. The anxiety goes down. Your colors correlate very much into that. And they talk about that green in nature, which is actually everything but green. But for the sake of what they talk about, those greens in there, and being an interior decorator as well, is that's affecting a certain spectrum, right? It tends to be calming for people, not for everyone. So once we move up into that inner wisdom, inner love, right? Your heart, the heart around it, the pericardium, all that stuff, we're getting into that piece of joy, right? Inner love. Once you start getting into the 600, right? And we're looking at that 600 hertz, we're looking now at going into what's called peace. And that peace correlates very much into the indigo colors, right? Into the purple. So that's where we get the term indigo, right? You're getting into there. And that's ideally where we want to get. It's all 7 chakras, within 7, within 7, within 7. We could go into that too. But in here, you're going to see that awareness. And that's actually ideally where I want to see people's litmus paper. It's from head to toe, from 0 to 700 and some, is that all the minerals, the vitamins, and all, you're starting to vibrate at a very high wavelength. Okay, this is great. That's getting into your gamma waves, right? And ultraviolet waves. Then going into what they call the great void, right? 8 to 850, getting into what we call a state of grace. I think one of the best books I ever read, by the way, is David Wolfe's. It's called Amazing Grace. And it's a state of excitement, state of grace, right? And then we're getting into when you're starting to get into the 10th, 11th, and 12th dimensions and higher, where you're getting to a state of full awareness, getting into the cosmic levels, into there. What is that view of life, in here? So I think we can correlate and put many different maps here, as you can see, together. Absolutely. And see how this correlates into your life. And that's the same thing when I'm talking about herbs and stuff. I want you to see that I have a lot of clients came again today. I just did one in the States. And again, someone that's a biofeedback at it for 4 or 5 years, right? Didn't know the basics and was again listening to the music without listening to it and letting the waves run through you. Listening is not enough. You need to be able to run the sound wave as a sound wave with the headphones, or again with earbuds that can be no radiation and stuff like that. You can get those. But again, even if I don't care if you went to the dollar store, something is better to run the left and right side of the brain to get that sinking in again. And so as you can see, people that have their colds, flus, and everything else are very low energy. Very low energy. Look at those 50, 60. When you start working with the oils, you're going to start raising that body up and up and up. Right? So those are some of the things we really need to get in tune with. And look at the vibrancy we can create. Look at that. That's what we should all look like. You should see it. When I see that color around people, I'm like, oh, wow. And you see like flashes of purple or something, and I'll go, whoa, that's someone that's really high, very conscious, very spiritual. They're getting their biofield. They're protecting it. They're looking after themselves. They're not letting people, take pieces of them like a doormat, right? And they're not letting people walk all over them, a people pleaser. Okay. These are the people that they've got their, stuff together here. And once you have that together, can you imagine walking by someone like that? Okay. A lot of times that's why people pull back when we walk through into a room and they what? Whoa, they're not used to seeing that intensity. They're just not. But then what happens, thank gosh for what's called entrainment, is that you want to start syncing together, kind of like 2 tuning forks. They want to start matching yours. Okay. They feel out of sync or out of coherency. And again, wherever that is, they need to look at it here. So this is where we're getting into using, neurofeedbacks and stuff like that. So those are some of the things. We're getting into psionics and what you call synergy. All those things are in there. So all around nature, that everything just vibrates and vibrates around us. There's so many cool things. And what I really love here is the water. Okay. I'm not sure if you guys knew, but for several months I did with Michelle Martin out of the UK. We did something on BitChute and on Telegram. It's called Quantum Chit Chat. Okay. So we did several videos there. This might be something that might be of interest, but we really went, I did some deep dives with her. We went into a lot of different topics here, from making remedies to water consciousness, what's creating and, creating disharmony in our environments, which is therefore creating disharmony in us. So take a look at that. That might be something that you guys might want to take a look at. So yeah, it's really great. So, hey, Margaret, how are you? Welcome in. So some of these things sound exciting. I'm glad they do. So one of the things, like I said, we want to learn about those solfeggio tones. We want to get a great grip on that. And how do we do that? That's why I like doing that in the biofeedback, because what are those solfeggio tones? We talked about. And again, those solfeggio tones could be called solfege, solfeggio, solfa. Sounds like you're sitting on a couch, a solfa. Again, you're teaching in the binaural beats, right? And you're getting those terms in. So you've got to be aware of that. So a lot of people just use the 9 or 10. But there are way more things than that. And there's an entire science, like I said, to help you with the mind, body, spirit of this. Okay? And there are a lot of people that get into this. That's where the thing of getting raw and plant-based or fruit-based is. Getting gluten-free and sugar-free and all those things, because they're working with solfeggio foods. And I don't know if you know about that. You can actually start going into, David Wolf alluded to it, another friend of mine, Chris, who's got Peace, Love, and Fruit. But Chris Kendall teaches a lot of that too, is that there are foods and you would go through a color group, 1 day a week. So day 1, we would be eating all red fruits like strawberries and everything else. Day 2 would be in the oranges, and you're eating for the chakras as well. So those are the type of things that will get into us, those love frequencies and stuff like that. So take a look at that. So like I said, those solfeggio tones, there are so many different maps. Everyone's got a different version of it, of course, right? So let's take a look here. So let's just go online and to see, what do they say? Go to the images. There's your solfeggio charts, the music, the instruments. How can we achieve that at home? Okay, everyone's got a version of it. Okay, it's not rocket science. It's been going on before they started polluting and diluting them, on here. So this is, there's a lot of different charts you can download and kind of play with that. So it's not just about music. It's about actually what it's doing and creating that sacred geometry, into you. So there's a lot of different things out there, but I prefer to create my own. So like I said, you can look at the solfeggio charts here. Look at them. There's just so many. There's so many cool things to awaken to. You can look at the notes. You can look at going into the harmonics. All sorts of things in there. Okay, there's a reason why. And those are your base ones in there. So if you remember that, that's where we're going. What I want to bring us into now is actually Dr. Paul Nogier. Okay. Who is he? Why is he? Why is he important? Well, there he is. Okay. Why have they got these weird ears that go like auriculotherapy that look like traditional Chinese medicine? Because that's what he's primarily known for. But this chart also has got what's called the 7 Nogier frequencies. So when you get into that, that's where we get into stuff, taking a look here. So back in there, these frequencies were put into place and they were discovered by him. He was an amazing French neurologist, and that every cell, every organ vibrates. So primarily what he started working with was with the ears. That's what he's most well known for. But we're going to go back in almost like tuning forks again. 292 was for inflammation. 584 was for muscle and cellular movement, nutrition, digestion, stuff like that. Listen here then, 1168 triggers muscle contraction. So this is where he started working with neurologies, right? Using things like tremors, Parkinson's, all those things, diabetes, neuropathy, right? Anxiety. 23, 26, enhance the body symmetry, right? So again, stress and balance. 46, 72 hertz, spinal cord. 73, see how he drops now to 73 to the subcortex. Eating disorders, endocrine, overweight, PMS, menstrual irregularities. And then the last one was 146. Now that was again the cortex to help with psychosomatic disorders. Okay, so these are going back to who is he, what is he doing, and why are we doing it? Okay, so those are the areas in here that he started looking at. And again, the idea was that he was using pulsed again. So the idea with the NOGIER that we can do through the genus biofeedback is that you're actually working with the ectoderm, the endoderm, the mesoderm. Okay, so the three areas of tissues for inflammation, infections, parasites, mental health, eyes, ears, nose, and then the whole gastrointestinal tract. Neuropathy, this is where he got into working things like with liver, pancreas, chronic conditions, muscle pain. Okay, these are really, really huge. So if you want to take a look at these videos, how he works primarily, and again, his 432 and A, he always scaled everything basically in the scale of D. And you're going to start seeing, again, how these frequencies start working. So a lot of things people worked on when you look at basically the ear, or what he called auricular, and I trained in auricular therapy in here, was that sometimes we would just use essential oils, and I've got glass probes here. For example, I'll show you in a few minutes that I had made up for crystal therapies. They were using seeds, or putting almost like, instead of an acupuncture point, they used them for smoking and stuff like that. They would put like a little, kind of like a baby little seed, and then they would tape it on there, which never seems to stick, but whatever. And so these were different things that you could go through these auricular probes. And I would use essential oils. And again, they would also sometimes use like a little bit of a TENS machine here, a little bit of a, electrical, magnetic, what's that? And you can see some of the stuff in here where they're, people would vary it out and use their, acupuncture needles and let them sit there for a bit. So again, it's part of the Rifen, different techniques there. So if you haven't looked at Dr. Paul NOGIER, this is really kind of cool stuff. So what did we say here? Oh, sounds exciting. Better, thanks. Oh, I look radiant today. Thank you. I'm wiped. Long day. Long things. Ostriches being taken down. People going psychotic, right? Things that needed to be done a long time ago. So people just do not get the thing that a lot of us know with the, hook up with the wide area body network, that there's, people, plants, animals, ostriches have got these little neurochips, and they've been fine. Them, they're, like a targeted individual. They've been torturing these animals for years and, slicing their throats out there themselves. So, don't buy into the hype when you don't know that stuff. So I'm in the local area. We know what's going down. I mean, there's everything from, Masonic hand symbols to people flashing, naked stuff yesterday. It's ridiculous out there. So anyway, color wheels are fun toys. Absolutely. As an interior decorator, you know about the complementary and playing with stuff too. So it all has to do with interior design as well, and feng shui, all that things in here. So you can, again, there's singing bowls. You can look at them and you can get them in different frequencies. You know what? I always said, you got to go get and mine's in the other room right now. But in here, when you get a singing bowl, you got to try them first. Some people can't make their sing, and other people's we can. So some people, and again, that's what we were talking about earlier, maybe before you were here, but, synesthesia, where people actually can hear colors and they hear or they see music, right? So very much in there. You have a lot of the children, the gifted indigo children. I'm sure you guys know about Uri Geller, but you know about the Russian children that they were teaching out there, like Anastasia, the Ringing Cedars of Russia. Those children could actually be blindfolded many times and just put their hands over or listen to something. I've had people, I actually know them, I've seen it done. They were actually blindfolded and they would put an album, take all the album covers off, and they could just say, out of 100 albums, I want to hear this song, and they would go pick that for you just by feel and vibration. So, people got some really, really cool gifts in here. And so that's one of the things here. And those people that have, if you've got the biofeedback, make sure you get your training manual, because guess what? It's all in here. There's your biofeedback and different things. So again, one of the, I think, amazing things that he identified, these basically 7 frequencies, right? And he showed that bringing this back, you could bring the tissue back. And that's where he got into the really cool stuff with the ectoderm and the mesoderm and all that, is that we could create a cell vibration. This is where his really thing got into taking down inflammation here. So again, surgical repairs, pain conduction, any imbalances, physical, mentally, emotionally is in there, right? And so do take a look, because every one of you guys that have got a biofeedback machine, guess what? You can just go to the NOGIER and play one of them or play all of them. Okay, so you can do that to your clients. And if you've got a QuantiCap, one of the QuantiCaps, you get one for solfeggio tones. So you get the 9 solfeggio tones. We can give to anyone on a QuantiCap. So if you want to listen to this and you're listening to the rerun of this, just send me your email to clanmother13@gmail, KL. Poor Linda sent me another one this morning. Someone sent it to the CL. I'm the KL, Clan Mother. Anyway, 13 on there. So if you send me that or put it underneath here, I will get back to you and I will send you a QuantiCap. You can put your own voice in your picture and you can play these for free for a week. Pure tones. And remember, that's the thing. Everyone goes, it's better to have a tuning fork. Sorry, but the isochrotic tones, we have to use generators for, and we do have pure tones that we can do through that. So those are one of the other things as well, is to go in. And again, when you get, Dr. Pulo, Joseph Pulo, basically kind of rediscovered and brought these frequencies back again, like back into the 70s, on here. And this research was coming that we could use, 9 to 7 tones to start bringing the body back into coherence here. And this was what they felt were actually incorporated into basically what you call the Gregorian chants before they got screwed up. So those are the sulfa things, and those are really, really important. And Margaret's got a great point. Yes, it's like a ribbon, the ethereal things that floats, and those are our connections to that. So that was one of the things we really wanted to take a look at here. And so I wanted to actually play you guys something here, and we'll try this as well. And like I said, I've got someone on here. It doesn't matter that I got someone else on here. I'm doing a client wherever I'm doing it. Let's go to those tones here, okay? Because if you go into the QuantiCap here, and like I said, you send me your email ahead of time. I will give you 7 days for free here. And then basically what happens, this is, let's say, the frequencies. And this is the 174, 285, 396, 417, all the way up to 969 here. And what you do is you actually just put them all in, add them all here, and then we're going to play them. And you can use it with or without the fractal geometry. So let's take a listen, and we're going to listen to these 9 solfeggial tones. I want you just to close your eyes for a minute. We'll listen to it for about a minute. I want you to take some nice deep breaths in through your nose. We'll just count to 4, and we'll hold it for 4, and we're going to blow it out through the nose for 4. We're going to suspend for 4. It's my 4, 4, 4, 4. Just let all the tensions go of the whole week. Nothing matters but this moment with you, with me, with those people listening. Okay? Take the opportunity to listen to it with your headphones. The headphones are the key to this. If you don't have headphones, like I said, you can also put headphones around your water glass. Create your own electrical pseuticals. Create your own solfeggial frequency elixirs. Okay? So there we go. We're taking those nice deep breaths. Right? Now that was pretty cool. I thought that was just amazing in here. So one of the other things too, we're going to go in, and I'm just going to go into it because I happen to love the Genius. Even the baby version is better than no version. Let's look at the chakra tones, shall we? We're just going to listen to the chakra tones again for another minute. Put your timer on, and let's just play what's on the page. So today we're just going to play that. Close the eyes, nice deep breaths. Now let's go over to our Nogier frequencies. Okay, so again, we've got different things in here, you know, when you're looking at stuff. So again, the Nogiers go in alphabets here. So Nogier A is for the ectoderm, C is for the mesoderm, the E is for pain. Okay, E, energy, pain. G is for cerebral, the big G. Okay, psychological stuff. You know, in there B, so the Nogier B in here is for gastro. Nogier D is for any kind of lateral, like chronic diseases, right? Laterality. F is for actually like a brain F, brain and bone conduction. And then we're going to go into Nogier L, which is for brain balancing or depression and anxiety. So let's take a look at that. So we're going to go in here and we're just going to play all the Nogier tunes. Let's listen to that. And again, remember, you're not going to hear stuff at 1,000 or whatever, most of it, because it just combines into a nice wind chime or a water fountain or whatever. Okay, until you can isolate them out, that's a totally different thing. Isochronic sounds are not necessarily the nicest things. Okay, I like to have things like this that your brain cannot track. So for me to lie down, there's no beginning, there's no end, and there's no pattern to it. And that's the nice thing when you're looking at this. So if you can see the patterns, look at the patterns that are happening here, like the sacred geometry, the fractals. Okay, you can change the patterns, you can change all those things. So let's say we were listening to that, and I'm just going to try something here. Let's go into something that's archetype. Okay, so you can do it by sound, or you can do it by color and fractals and lights. So if I change the totality of any of this, what it can do is actually go in, and we're going to have a whole different sound here in a second. So we go back to our Nogiers. Let's take a look at this. Not always the easiest to listen to, okay? But that's what I'm talking about. You don't have tuning forks at these frequencies, do we? No. And so this is where this gets into really precision sound frequency medicine. So close your eyes for just a sec. You can hear the very low tones. Now, let's just put one together here. This is something, actually, I always feel the frequencies, obviously, when I'm doing someone else and doing a distance therapy. What's going to happen is I'm going to feel what they're getting. So here is something I just wanted to give you, because I actually did this for a client. Every time I put it on, I got this like really kind of cool wave. Like it was cleaning my belly flow out, not just his. So let's take a look here. And we're going to change it back to our nice little, frequency sounds here and our defaults. So let's just take a look here and see what comes up here. And so as we go back, we're just going to run that frequency. There's 453 frequencies I gave to my client today. So herbs and oils, and even in here, crystals. I used like one in here because what I've got in here, and I'm going to come back to that, I made a tuning fork one. I've got a tuning fork at 514, right? Which is the C above the head chakra for unconditional cosmic love, for female reproduction. I can go into the pineal gland at a 222 as well. So there's not only just the ones you associate with, there's other ones as well. And we went into this. This was amazing. You've got to see what we were doing here. And so take a listen to this, because I started getting a lot of tingling today. And I went, well, whatever he needed, I needed today. That was the way it went. So let's take a look at this. Right? So if you take a look, let's see what it's doing to that frequency. Nice deep breaths. And we'll just listen to this for a minute or so. And hopefully that will stay up here, not fall off. I don't sneeze. Let's take a look at adding now the frequencies that we talked about using the tuning forks on top of that. So I'm going to add to that, right? So we're going to add to those frequencies. It sounds like a bird song at night with peeper frogs. That's exactly it. I hear those things, right? You can hear the combinations of different things. It'll actually even bring different, like it is. It's like, I'm hearing this. That's what it feels like, kind of sounds like. You know, like I said, if it bothers people, you can always go, you know, into more of this. And I find those of you that do sound therapy or biofeedback and Inside Health app, this is a great thing to add while your clients are listening for 3-4 minutes. We're playing with several of them. Okay. And a train horn in the distance. Yeah, that could be in there. So we've let that kind of run it. It's kind of coarse there, right? So those are some of the things we wanted to take a look at tonight. And so those are probably some of the simplest and best things I can, you know, advise going into. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk a little bit before we part here this evening. Soiree, ce soir. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about what's called the spine, the song of the spine. I really want to go into that. Okay, very, very, very important that, you know, people get what's going on in here. And so one of the things in what's called the song of the spine are certain frequencies again, and this is where kombanen, okay, we're going to actually take a listen to this, because what you're doing is in here, it's changing the whole look at the way we look at medicine here. Okay. And so I'm going to just play this in here for a minute, and we're going to take a listen to some of this. And this is going back into the A432. So let's take a look here. Let's take a listen. I'm going to share this again and again. Look it up. Take your due diligence. Do your studies on stuff. And here we're going to go into the song of the spine. Ready? So what you're seeing down here is we get into the coccyx and the sacrum, and we're moving up into the lower lumbar, right? This is just using pure isochronic tones, not always the most pleasant, but you can get those weighted tuning forks I showed you. 228, 233, 292, 136. So those are some of the different things you can listen to, and you're going to move up here into your frequencies, right? Slowly, it's crawling up the spine. Okay, this is something you can run on the background, just like on your Genius. You can run your spinal up in here. So again, those are different things as well you can take a look at here. So if you haven't seen that, do take a look at this. Again, the song of the spine. Okay, we'll hold the stuff in here. So again, take a look at, you can see all the different frequencies here. Okay, there's a great little booklet and stuff like that to know everything about what we're talking about here. So again, those particular frequencies, okay, are basically creating what's called standing waves here. Okay, and when they started looking at the resonance, the sound, the vibration, each vertebrae, all 33 vertebrae have 33 and actually double. So we're talking about 66 frequencies alone, let alone everything else in here. So there's some books in here you can take a look at. There's some great stuff out here. And in here again, look at the videos. Like I said, you've got videos that you can go play with. Okay, on here, study them. This is where the anatomy comes in, you know, with playing with some of this stuff here. And so, as I said, you can download some of these charts. I think they're absolutely amazing. Okay. And they do just absolute wonders here. And learn a little bit about how we were built in the frequencies again, and have the different solfeggio tones going in here.
I spent $2,400 on lip.
Why do they have to do this? I would just love to have it where we didn't have to have commercials all the time, right? Let's take a look again in here and see what comes up, right? Again, those are isochronic tones. These are based on the work of Dr. June Wider. Okay, so in here, not always pleasant. Again, those are the isochronic tones that we were talking about, right? They're not that nice. That's why I'm saying you can combine different things. One of the things I like to do, working with some of the ones, let's say like the biofeedbacks in here, is that we're going to go into the last one. Well, no, we're going to go into two more. So one of the things in here that we looked at is actually into the spine. So let's play those spines. This is like doing a music. So a lot of times I will do this, if I'm not talking to someone, I get their voice, their picture, I download everything through the general overview. And I in less than 3 minutes, I'm in the background massaging people, right? So it doesn't take long. But if I go into one that's called the spinal energy, where I'm looking at, that particular individual. And again, you don't know what it is, hit the little spyglass and it will tell you on the side what it is. What is the C1 responsible for, right? So if you go here, it says the head supply to the head. Okay, you don't have to know everything. We don't expect that. So as you go up and down the spine like the itsy bitsy spider, let's just play this for a few minutes again. So it doesn't matter. We're going to go through everyone's spine. Now, it always tends to sound virtually the same, but not always. Remember, you can't hear the overlays. And the sign in the spine, the sinus center has to do with the sine wave, but very cute. It's close. Sine is to do with sine. That's what they said scripturally. I always wanted to be the biggest sinner in the world. Okay, that meant you were right, high vibration. Okay, if you look at the elliptical, when they talked about Jesus and the cross and everything else, you'll learn that actually the crucifix was the sine wave, the elliptical sign, as you went through the 13-month processional, not 12. So again, take a listen, because we're going through those again, 33 vertebrae. Let's take a little moment to absorb. And do some deep breathing, just expand it. Just imagine that you've got a string and it's pulling your spine straight. And you can connect that with a silver light, a gold light, sparkly light, whatever you want. And that's is where you can add this when you're doing, how many of you do yoga or Pilates or chair yoga or something? Keep this low and then work it as you're doing that particular exercise. Let's say if you're doing a cat-cow or if you're doing sun salutation or something like that, if you're doing a certain, position, right? Stretch it, use this, put the essential oils on first and then use it. So the last one we talked about, which I haven't talked about yet, but now we're going to talk about it, is actually going in and using what I love, traditional Chinese medicine we know as acupuncture points, right? So one of the top ones in here will work with, let's say, the gallbladder meridian. So if you go into the gallbladder, right, we open up that gallbladder and just remember, okay, you've got, it says GB25. So someone's GB25 here is out. So if you hit the little red information dot, it says, oh, it's GB25, urinary retention or pain, difficulty passing urine. Okay, so some individuals got some problems, and you know what this individual has, by the way? You know why that came up for that client today? This client's on peritoneal dialysis. Okay, so mine surprised that his urinary retention, pain, or difficulty in passing urine, kidney problems, and edema, low back pain is on antihypertensions. That's the number one issue here. So I'm going to show you something here. I can either go to quick balance, which is going to do all the red and all the blue in here. So I could do all those acupuncture points. Or let's say I just want to take that GB25, that's a real pain in the, I can't say ass, but kidney. I could put it up into here. And now what I'm going to do is when I put the GB25, just one here, then I hit play. And then I'm just doing it like sticking one needle in there. Okay. No, don't even get me into the asparagus. We have to change stuff today. Again, a lot of people are unaware that they're so acidic, they're not eating, properly. So I wanted to show you just a couple other tips and little things that I know on that. So there is actually, when you have people in there, there is a diet when people have got kidney failure. I don't know if you know that, but it's actually primarily with actually using white rice. Not that I ever liked it, but my gosh, they got excellent things in here. So it was a white rice diet for kidney failure. And guess what? They started doing this. It kind of reminds me of the elimination diet in here. And that was one of the things when you got people into the early stages of kidney disease, they started actually doing some things. And the thing is basically Dr. Walter Kempner. And so he worked with a lot of people in there from glomerular nephritis to eye diseases and stuff like that. And when they started getting, people following Dr. Kemper's, he was a medical doctor, in there, he started treating a lot of this kidney disease and hypertensive with this diet. And it worked. Okay. But what they did, same thing today when I went to go deal with my client today. Are you eating this? Are you eating this? Well, yes. Are you eating this? Well, yes. Do you know about essential oils? No. And again, that's something that a lot of people, will have. You've got a biofeedback for a reason. So I really think, people going in there. So you can do all the juniper you want and all the cranberry and all that. So you're going to look at Dr. Walter Kemper. That's basically what that is on that. So it's not just white rice, but primarily. Anyway, Dr. Walter Kemper. Okay, he was a medical doctor, and he dealt with kidney edema, congestive heart failure, dialysis. If they were that far down, we just called it the rice diet. But anyway, it's not just rice, but that's what he was known for here. He did a lot of people, also with eyes. Okay, and one of the things too you can take a look at is actually going in. I'll just put that in the chat room for you guys right in there. So take a look at that. Is also using things like DMSO. I started talking to people again. I really love DSMO. I mean, that's sulfur. Some people are so deficient in. So some of the things in here, if you can take a look at this, okay? Excellent thing. I love Dr. Amanda Vollmer. She's known as the Yummy Doctor, okay? But those are some of the top things in here. She's actually got a thing called Yum Naturals, and she's a naturopathic and also agriculture biotechnology, but she's actually in Ontario. And so you'll see a lot of the stuff in there on that. But if you haven't looked at DSMO, that's a great thing to start putting on the skin. You can dilute it, 10 to 20% and the rest water or whatever like that. You can use some essential oils on, spraying it on. They're using a lot for eyes. A lot of people are getting their eyes are improving, actually reversing even things like cataracts and stuff. So using that with pro powder stuff. So those are things that you might want to take a look at. So Dr. Amanda Vollmer, she's got a really great, she's very outspoken like me too. She's in Ontario, and she's very verbose, but she's got, a private thing on Substack now. So again, if you want to take a look at that, there's a great question. You think it sounds like a topic when playing with biofeedback? Yep. Okay, so Jeannie, what are you asking about? Where to get the DSMO or where to get the rice? And again, organic rices, guys. Okay, let's look at DSMO. There's a great way to end off today. So DMSO, what is it? Okay, so what we're talking about in here is you're talking about it's a natural alternative for pain relief and inflammation. Top things, strokes. People are doing amazing doing stuff here. I used a lot of it for actually joints, back, muscles, putting it on. So you can either spray it on or use it with aloe vera gel and essential oil. So I actually make up my own, but we'll take a look at some of these. And again, you can get them on imaging, and you want to get an organic, source obviously on here. So DSMO is something that's really important. If you haven't looked at it, add it into your repertoire. Put it in, the filing cabinet here for a reason. So DSMO, and again, you can get organic stuff. So there's some amazing creams and gels you can get here. Okay. And they will add a lot of times, like I said, aloe vera into it. Things along like that. So again, there's a lot of stuff out there. You're seeing how to apply it. You're seeing all sorts of different, books in here. Now, one of the things too, let's say you want to look for eyes. A lot of people are using DSMO for eyes. So they're using DSMO and castor oil, DSMO and pro powder and things like that. So again, look up, get the books, take a look at the images, see what they've got here. And boop, there we go. Okay, you'll see people 3%. Okay, what have they got there? So basically, you've got a really nice sulfur there. So these are different things that you can buy, but like I said, you can always dilute them at home. Okay, and if you haven't looked at that, do take a look at it or be aware of it. Okay, so like I said, you can spray it, you can put it in. A lot of people, like I said, on skin. And like I said, a lot of things are coming in here. Anything to do with eyes. Also tinnitus and ear infections. Toothaches. A lot of people are using it for periodontal. I use a lot of that too. I'll use pearl powder and dip my, toothbrush as well. Put some DSMO in it as well. Baking soda, whatever. Make up your own compound. So these are some different things here. And again, if you look at Yummy Doctor, there she is. Amanda's got stuff for eyes, cataracts, different things on here. There's a really cool blend here. They said what they've done is they've put in, some parts of DSMO, and they've also put in some castor oil. Okay, so a lot of different things out there. You're seeing a lot of people that are actually micro needling or doing microblading and stuff like that for skin, and then using a frequency wand over top. So those are different things in here. And if we go in and we take a look on Amazon or a really great supplier, and those people that know Matt from Cultivate to, Elevate to Cultivate, you'll see a lot of these things on here. So those are something, if you're not aware of it, do take a look there. Okay, so let's leave it like that. It's a great Friday. Do you guys have any questions? I'm going to give you a chance here. If you have a burning question, is there a certain thing that you would like me to look at and review? If you've got a question like how do we deal with joint pain? How do we deal with anxiety? I think next week I really want to get into the emotional mental health. And I've been asked as well, if you don't know who Micah Dank is, Micah Dank has actually asked me to do a show with him. And I'm still waiting. We're going to set up whenever we're going to do the one with Sabrina down the road here. But Micah Dank is actually teaches astrotheology. And he actually has written several books on it. So if you don't know who Micah is, take a look here. He's an astrotheologist. And that's similar to Jordan Maxwell and Santos Bonacci. So if you know who that is, okay, you're going to be for a ride. So him and I are going to do some really cool things on here. And so you can look forward to me doing a couple of shows here anyway on there. And I think I have another one. I've just contacted Dr. Debbie Drake out of Ontario at healthcounts.ca and Carrie Cassidy. So we're going to do another show with Carrie Cassidy and Dr. Debbie Drake as well coming in here. So one of the things I wanted to take a look at. So this is Micah Dank. And again, you can go in and take a look at, he's got some different books he's done on the astrotheology, down the rabbit hole, and all sorts of things. Pretty amazing stuff. And if you've seen what Micah's been doing, do take a look. He's got videos and he does lives quite a bit here. So this is a really kind of interesting thing. He's been out for quite a few years. I've known him. We've been connected. But these are some hidden things that, like I said, they've been tricking people down the rabbit hole. And, even when you look at different texts, he looks at so many different original texts as well from that and compares them and said, you know what? This may not be quite what, some of the churches may be teaching, and looking at the astrotheological point of view. And this is where we get into fun things like we're talking about, like the sine waves and stuff like that, and being a sinner. So he was like, where did you learn all this? And I said, I was hanging out with Santos Bonacci like 15 years ago. So this might be something pretty cool that you guys might want to take a look at. So Micah Dank's pretty amazing. And I think we've got a few things. Like right now, Tony Pantalleresco is definitely up right now. He's in his, he's in fine form tonight. He's on his Discord. So I don't know how many of you guys are in the Discord room. He's actually there right now, probably talking, I would think. He's an hour and something into it. So if you guys are not around or don't know about this, I'm just going to screen share with this too, because there is a Tony Pantalleresco. And if you like exploring some of his, the spike and things like that, and the triangle and anti-nanotech that's used a lot for not only people that have not been injected, but dealing for the nanotech and the graphene to looking at, why not to take carbon C60, ivermectin, all those things, methylene blue, EDTA. He's been talking about this stuff for like 20 years, guys. This is not new to him. And so one of the things in here that you might want to take a look at is that he is on his Discord right now. And on that Discord, I'm just going to show it to you because we're going to go in there. We might be able to sneak in here and listen for just a second. But if we go into the Discord, what you're seeing here, it's called Piton Server. I always think of Piton like reminds me of a peacock. But anyway, we have general events in here. He has set up all sorts of just general talk. So right now, they're all chit-chatting while he's talking. So you're seeing a lot of things flying in here during his talks. So this is what he prefers to do. It goes up to Substack, recipes, resources, all sorts of stuff, movie suggestions. He's got a whole bunch of like his PDFs are going into here. So if it's something up in here, he's got back channels. He's back channeling everything in here. So if we were to listen here and just go in, if you get in, you need to have a Discord channel. You can get into the general chat where he's at.
Kind of stupidity.
Can you hear? There we are.
Okay. Cults are what they are. Cults.
It's just talking
And
about them.
all they're designed to do is entrap and ensnare you.
Cult of
Just
the
like what we got
ostrich
going
today.
on right now. What do we call it? A political, or we call it religious?
There we go.
We call it spiritual. These are cults.
Okay. So
The policies of our government. Cults.
there we go. So if you're a big Tony
The policies of our
Pantalesco,
churches or our places of worship. Most
once
of them are
he's
cults.
done,
People coming up with new age bullshit. That's
See
all
that?
cults. MK Ultra crap. All cults.
okay, once you want to go into there and listen, that's actually when you can talk to these people directly. So once he's done his show in about 2 hours, you can actually go in and not only text to him directly, you can open mic and you can talk to people like him directly, or me or someone else. There's usually some 2 or 3 people in there. So anyway, let's see what I've got here. So it's about time I did a show together. Sweet peacocks, turkeys, and their carcasses all look the same. Don't get me started. And Pike gets a new statue. There we go. Okay, we're going to leave it with that because you know where I'm going. I'm going to go listen to Tony for a bit. It's my Friday, and he's every second day, by the way. So if he's on Friday, it's now going to be on Sunday, and then on Tuesday. So it's every second day around this time on that where you can catch into it. So like I said, if it's something that you want to explore or have some questions, he's a great for compounding, DSMO with this or STP or different things like that. So it's something in there, but yeah, Deanie said she's in there now too. So anyway, let's leave that. And I think next week, if you have any questions, let's shoot me emails. And again, I'll put this at the end here. So we're going to put the Clan Mother 13 and those people on Facebook. Remember, I've got a separate page as well. I've got several. I just got back again today. So one of the things in here, if you want to get that Quanta cap, if you want to do that or you want to get the cap, I need your email ahead of time. And then I'll do a little mini session for you and we'll send that. Those people that want to explore this, I'll put that into the chat room as well, because really, really important that we have access to these kind of things, because I think it's just amazing, in here. And I'll put those in. So if it's something you want to try, any of those extra apps, like I said, I think Insight Health Apps has got by far the most amount of apps that I've seen, at least with all one, like trainers, that type of thing, education. I think it's really important to do that. And so one of the things, if you take a look here, like I said, people need to, kind of get on what's been going on. And I want you to see something. I deal with, actually, she's just an amazing, not only in biofeedback and live blood cell, but she was one of the top, basically, chefs, raw food chefs. She even worked with Martha Stewart. She was in, basically in Australia and came back into Alberta and became part of Life Force Canada and Children's Health Defense Canada and quite a few other things, National Citizens Inquiry. So she was one of the top people that was actually an investigator and actually doing interviews for people, you guys. And I'm just going to bring it to your attention because guess what she's got? I can see Matt from Cultivate to Elevate to Cultivate is on. And here's something. He's a very strong one about teaching the dangers of methylene blue and these different pharmaceuticals and what's going on. So when you take a look at this, I'm just going to screen share before we leave here because I think this is really important. You know, just like trying to teach people, you know, ostriches are not healthy. People that have been injected are not healthy. Children that have been injected are not healthy. Dogs that have been injected are not healthy. And being asymptomatic or lying dormant, look at all what happened with shingles and all of a sudden, or cancers, because these are from those bloody injections, right? And I'm not going to argue if it means poison or whatever your take on it. The point is that they are poisoning people. This is an assault on the adults and poisoning for the pediatrics. There's no questions about it. And, you know, then when you get into the stuff that we talk about in the synergy groups and the wide body area network and the artificial intelligence and the linkages, linking someone's neural synapses, whether it's a cat, a dog, a child, or an ostrich, up to the Internet of Things, that's what people refer to as mental cruelty. They cannot tell that they're not scrambling the brains. They cannot tell that they've got made an autistic basically in there. They cannot yell and scream. They cannot tell you that they're developing cancer. They cannot tell you that there is a kidney tumor. You know, I have never seen such stupidity in my entire and ignorance in my entire life as this entire operation, which I'm going to be so glad that it's done on here, you know, and that people that were slaughtering, you know, you don't slaughter pets. You don't put them in for experimental, you know, injections from all over the world. And thousands of adjuvants were given in this one little pen over a period of years that massive amounts died under these people's care. Like, people just don't get it. And I'm like, there's the cognitive dissonance, and it has nothing to do. If governments had been into place where the bar is here and these are the rules, they failed it every day for 5 years. Every day it was failed. And thank gosh for the people that, you know, got a little worried in the areas, right? And brought some light into this cult that they're doing their little, you know, hand signals and flashing their shirts up at the, you know, drones and the cameras and the RCMP there. You have to question mentality and the operations of what goes on. So, you know, it's kind of ironic Tony's talking about all the cults today, because that's exactly what these things are, right? Absolutely what's going on in here. So I'm going to just show you here. Matt's in his fine form. Then do take a look here. And we are going to go into here. So this is Matt. There we go.
Platform. You kind of sit there and wonder, why are you being, you know, marketed this something? And it's interesting because people get all crazy with parasites, which is really just heavy metal overload. You got tons of metals in your body, and ivermectin has heavy metals inside of it. So people are just taking the same stuff, and then they'll go, "Oh, well, it fixed me." Well, it suppressed the symptoms.
Exactly.
Like all antibiotics.
Yeah. Herd mentality,
you know, so
guys.
Like you said, it's like people have been fed one thing, and then they've got all these podcasts which have promoted this and got it into a $32 billion industry, which is backed by, this was crazy when I looked up who makes ivermectin. I found Merck.
Me too.
I found Johnson
I checked.
Johnson.
I checked.
Found Pfizer. I found Bayer.
Yep.
You know, I found all the pharmaceutical companies who are making the vaccines in 2020 are the same ones making the ivermectin.
So right there, why are people not questioning this? Every day I get that same thing. I said, you know what? It's like people that took antibiotics, or in my case, when I was little, right? Ear infections. I guess Dukalex, I must have been constipated. There must have been parasites. We weren't dewormed when I was little, which led to, like, you know, 11 mercury fillings, which led to like being brain damaged for like 30 years, controllable, malleable, right? Then in a city in Saskatoon with, you know, like, you know, fluoride on top of it. I'm amazed I'm still here. I really am. And so these are the things that you need to question. Okay, you got to question everything. You know, it's the same thing when I was looking at this cult out there, just to end on that wonderful note, is that at least some of this stopped, the containment stopping. But when you're GPSing in here, these people are being contract traced, okay? They are Internet of Bodies, Internet of Things, or in this case, Internet of Animals, okay? Contract tracing has been going on for 30 bloody years, people. 30 years. When Sabrina Wallace talks that she was an N2 back in the 70s, she was given a neural N2 version of the Neuralink chip. Hello. Okay. These people are in their 30s and 40s now. Come on. 50s. This is not new. And so when you realize who's doing this or who funded that and who funded the farm and who gave them $13 million and who wanted to give them $49,000 an egg, think about where that's coming from. I said, these are open, Wuhan-like open bioweapons that have violated every minimalistic government law. If it was mine, it would be that big, but theirs is that big, and those were all violated. No quarantining, touching, this, that, no fencing on top, no netting up top, minimum requirements that failed to be followed. And for those now that we're going to learn, and when people say to me, well, no one got sick, I can get you 3-4 videos. And I can tell you people that were out there and got sick because they were out there and came to me even 3-4 days later. I'm like, you're not coming to my house, not coming into my center. I don't want bioweapons being transferred. Remember, you can be asymptomatic and a carrier, that it's being carried in the biofield and can sit there till it works its way in and does it. And you know what freaking herd mentality is? You know what herd mentality is, right? It's mind hive thinking. It's like, they're all on the same frequency. But worse than mind hive is the idea of having herd immunity. What are you, a cow? What are you, an ostrich? What are you, a pig? What happens is that when you get that system and someone gives me, one sort of poison here, right? And let's say I'm taking a look at something. Let's say this is the poison that they gave into someone. When someone else has it, comes around with it, well, you don't flag it as the poison because guess what? It's not going to set you up. That's not herd immunity. That's called suppression. That's called you don't have an immune system anymore, which is why when I get near someone, and it happened again this week, right? I must have gotten too close within a couple feet of someone that must have been really vaxxed or took another, oops, can't say that here on YouTube. I'm going to learn that. Might have to pull this down. The whole thing is that basically when those injections come in, what's going to happen? I actually vaginally bled this week again. I'm like, oh, geez, where'd that come from? I was hardly around anyone, but you never know when you're going to get someone that's taken this and that booster and then the flu shot again, right? And then there's more me coming around with my, all my, tech. And I've got my, copper stuff on, and I've got my air tamers on, and I've got essential oils all over, but you don't know what's going to be coming at you that day, right? You don't. It's all changing. And so, exactly, Cheryl. Great point. All is funded by those, which goes back to BlackRock, and who's worse than BlackRock and Vanguard? ACIO tells you at the ACIO organization, Umbrella, Mobius, Markov, Delta, Monarchy Corporation, right? Those are the people and those families, familias, that really are the ones doing this, right? And this is where you got to get doing that. So like I said, you may not notice stuff, right? It's like how many times do you have to be subjected to chemo and radiation and your hair starts falling out and your eyes start falling out and they're filling you with all this poison, right? But look how long it takes to work to that point that it's knocked out your 6 and 7 chakra, right? So great point. Read a blip about fascinating getting charged by a country for over 1,700 murders. Yep, exactly. So if you're looking at New Zealand and some of those right now, they have said that they are going to be filing in there, and this is going to be happening, okay? This is what they have decided. That's actually on my Facebook stuff. So if you actually go into some of my intel groups, and I'm not sure if you guys know about that, but I'll just plug myself. It's not being shameless, but I'm going to actually plug that in here. Okay, because if you don't know, that's where I transfer the information when I'm not getting banned and I'm on another one. I lost one today, got it back today, and then I have another one I'm banned till I think Monday at supper or something insane. But when you get into these type of things, those are really, 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 really huge. Okay, and so some of the things in here make a huge difference. So again, if you're looking for the really weird stuff, if you are on Z Facebook, that I still have up here. There's something that I've caught. This is again, inner circle page. And by the way, we have jumped from 2,000 to 3,000 in the last couple of weeks. I have actually, I think, put in 20 some people. And again, a lot of them are getting kicked out. Okay. So whatever's in here, okay, I'm talking about different things, making, stuff with salt. There's a thing I wanted to talk to you about too. We're going to bring that in next week with all the anxiety and stuff like that. But basically, this is where Greg Braden is talking about using the 200 hertz. I'll put that actually in here. Is using the 200 hertz in here because that is one of the things, right? And I said, let's get Ryan Williams. Look at Dr. Lee Bartel. Look at Anthony Holland. Look at Dr. Cody Vull. Those are all things that are rewiring the brain in 3 days, 72 hours with what we're doing. He talked about when you get, the Tibetan monks or they start doing that, I can actually take those sounds the Tibetan monks actually chant and put it into my sound generator through the Genius. So again, you can sound generate anything. So a lot of stuff in there. This is stuff that's totally inappropriate in here, but talking about wearable devices, right now, those wearable devices, they can track your cell individually in the bloodstream and then manipulate it. Okay, this is stuff people need to get their stuff around. So if it's something that's, of interest to you that you want to, have something in here, what's going on, like I said, just happens to be in my area on here, right? Information is being passed so much, right? And I'm in very large groups that can tell you exactly when did this start? When did it happen? What was the securities? What was the grifting? What was the loans? And by the way, who was suing who? This is not clean. Samples, over here, we found a year ago, basically, that they actually found stuff from BC in the States, right? And remember, just because something, that's not the last one that died, but whatever, there's a bunch that died here, right? Doesn't mean that they're healthy. It means that they're carriers. Okay. And you cannot determine something on a biofield, physically, mentally, emotionally, right? And you can have so many things wrong by the time it shows up into here. So these are different things that, have been going on that we're bringing to people's attention here. Okay. Another great thing, if you're into looking at stuff, Dr. Mayim Bialik, right? Lots of stuff. I've got lots of stuff in here. So take a look at it. So anyway, you guys have a great week. We'll see you next week. We're going to talk about emotional and mental, your emotional EQ. We're going to talk about basically anxiety, post-traumatic stress, bipolar, what other options, and then what other options we have on there. So if it's something that's of interest to you, we'll tie in probably a little bit of SARA for your sexual abuse, ritual abuse. How's Dream Dust 38 tonight? Nice to see you guys. So anyway, we'll talk about that, right? We're going to talk about that biofield. So, and keep it up. If you listen, there was some great stuff Dorian had as well, So take a look at it. Like I said, you put them in the filing cabinet, just like I put them in the filing cabinet, just like here. Here's Sabrina's show. Here's Tony's show. Here's Nancy's show. Here's my shows. And I pull out what I need when I need it. Like I said, Rigging Cedars of Russia and the water salt book and maybe some Jensen's. And we basically got everything covered in here, really. That's where we're at, right? Okay, so take care. Lots of love, you guys, and we'll see you later. And if you want, feel free to reach out to me on one of those mediums, right? Get me on one of those social networks. We'll talk to you later. Ciao.